So this guy really wants a girlfriend. The problem is, he's kind of a serial killer. Now the guy's name is Robert, and Robert is about 29 years old when this story starts, and he's living in British Columbia in Canada. And like I said, the dude really wants a girlfriend. But he's kind of a socially awkward guy. Like, he doesn't know how to talk to women. He doesn't even really have any friends, much less access to single women. But one day in 1978, his life changes because his mother unfortunately passes away, and Robert ends up inheriting control of his family's pig farm. And for the first time in his life, he has complete freedom. And with this new freedom, Robert moves into this trailer on a remote part of the farm, and he starts bringing women around to help him around the place. You know, and like have them clean and whatnot, and he'll like pay them with money or with drugs sometimes. And he's hoping to smash with some of these women, but none of them like him. They're really put off by his awkwardness and his bad hygiene. Apparently he stank. So he starts going downtown and hiring prostitutes and smashing with them. And over time, he becomes kind of a regular in the area. I guess all the women know him and they're like, "Hi, Robert, stank ass." And he keeps up this routine for a long time. But then years pass, and it's now 1991. And somewhere along the way, for some reason, he gets the urge to be violent. And one night, he goes downtown and he picks up a hooker, and he brings her back to his pig farm. And there, he murders her. We aren't exactly sure how he does it, but he does it. Later, he does the same thing again and again and again. He does it a few times. And a few years after that, he sells off part of his land and he gets quite a bit of money for it. And in 1996, with a big portion of this money, he and his brother convert the slaughterhouse on his farm into sort of a homemade nightclub, which they call Piggy's Palace Good Times Society. And in this homemade nightclub, they start throwing parties. And these parties are massive. Sometimes up to 1,800 people will show up. And they're like sketchy-ass people, like drug addicts and members of biker gangs and stuff. So, as you can imagine, these Piggy Palace parties are chaotic. Lots of drug use and loud noise and late-night traffic, and people constantly coming and going. So this kind of creates the perfect cover for Robert, because he can bring sex workers to his farm and nobody would ever notice if they didn't leave. And that is exactly what he does. He throws big parties, and then he hires prostitutes to show up, and at some point he'll take them back to his trailer or whatever, and then he'll murder them. Then, to dispose of the bodies, he'll sometimes feed them to his pigs. Like one night in 1997, he's cruising around town, and he spots this woman, Wendy. And Wendy is a sex worker who really needs money. So Robert pulls over and he convinces her to come back to his place so that they can party or smash or whatever. And she does. She goes back to his place and they hook up. But afterwards, Wendy's like, "Cool, let me get my money now." But Robert is like, "Nah," and he refuses to pay her. Not only that, he's also refusing to let her use the phone, so she can't call for a ride. And Wendy, she isn't having any of that. So she gets a phone book, and there she starts looking through it. And I guess this really pisses Robert off. So boom, he grabs her hand and he tries to handcuff her. And Wendy starts fighting him off. So now they're in this big fight and he picks up some kind of stick and pow, he starts hitting her with it. And then she manages to get a hold of the kitchen knife and boom, she stabs him in his neck. So now that he's lost the fight, Robert finally agrees that, yeah, she can leave. However, as soon as she exits the trailer, bam, he grabs her and he stabs her a couple of times. So then Wendy runs away, and she eventually makes it to a nearby hospital. And of course, there she tells police everything that happened. And so, bam, police arrest Robert. Here's a picture of his creepy ass. But pretty quickly, he gets out of jail on bail while he waits for his trial. Now, because Wendy is a sex worker and apparently a drug addict as well, prosecutors feel like she won't make a very reliable witness and that they won't be able to prosecute Robert. So, 9 months later, after he was arrested, they end up dropping the attempted murder charges against him. And there are ultimately no consequences for him. And I'm sure this makes him feel unstoppable. Like if he picks up sex workers off the street and he feeds them to his pigs, how is anyone ever gonna know? How is anyone ever gonna catch him? So he continues on with his murderous antics, and he'll find a local prostitute and he'll lure them back to his farm by promising them money or drugs. Once he gets them there, he kills them. And then sometimes he'll dispose of the body parts by feeding them to his pigs. And he does this over and over and over again for years until he's killed around 49 different women. And so to him, this is the perfect crime. Like he feels like he's never going to get caught. In fact, he's so confident that he's never going to get caught, he makes it his personal goal to get 50 kills. Like he's going to win some kind of trophy or something. But honestly, the way things are going, he may never actually get busted. Until 2002, when this guy enters the story. His name's Scott. And Scott is a friend of Robert's, but Scott is also super broke. And one day, he's over at Robert's place, and he notices that Robert owns some illegal firearms, like a gun with a silencer and some outlawed tactical gear, stuff like that. And he also discovers that he can get some reward money if he secretly turns Robert in for having those things. So Scott calls the police, and he's like, Robert has illegal guns at his property. Now give me my reward money. And so police go out to Robert's property, and they search the place looking for these guns. But here's the thing about Robert. Not only is he somewhat arrogant about his crimes, he's also a bit sloppy. Like sometimes he'll leave dismembered parts around the farm, or he'll leave some of the women's personal items just lying around in random places. So while police are there searching for the guns, they stumble upon some personal items belonging to the missing women, such as an asthma inhaler and some identification cards and stuff like that. So then they come back a second time and they conduct a broader search, and that's when they find DNA and bones and other forensic evidence of the women that he murdered scattered all across the property. And so, bam, police arrest Robert. And I don't have his mugshot, but here's just a picture of him. And ultimately, Robert confesses to killing 49 women total in the last decade or so. And eventually he goes to trial and he's found guilty and he's sentenced to life in prison. But that's not the end of his story. 22 years later, in 2024, Robert is in prison, and according to the other inmates, he talked loud and openly about all the horrible murders he committed back in the day. So at one point, another inmate gets super pissed off at him, and he wants to get justice for the victims. And so, pow, he starts beating on Robert, and he beats the hell out of him. Then he grabs a broom, and he breaks the handle, and he stabs him with the pointy end. And Robert dies.